Turnovers by an underperforming Oklahoma offense led to a turnover at the quarterback position, followed by a turnover on the coaching staff. But now it's time to turn the page. 5 games left starting Saturday and 4 top 25 foes standing between the Sooners and bowl eligibility. The winds of change have blown through Norman this week, but it's time for them to subside because there's a season to be salvaged. From inside Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium in Norman, this is Sooner Game Day presented by Taco Mayo. Big appetite, bigger savings. Download and save today. Oklahoma's first ever football game in the state of Mississippi finds Sooner Nation reeling and rolling into the Grove in Oxford. The Rebels are coming off a bye, but a loss at LSU the prior week. Kickoff 11 a.m. It is on ESPN. And we welcome you inside. I think when Oklahoma announced that the Sooners would be going to the SEC, a lot of people kind of penciled in that trip to Oxford as a must-see destination. Nobody could have forecast what the circumstances would be as we approach Saturday. You know my partners here, the Butkus Bednarik Award-winning linebacker, national champion at Oklahoma, Teddy Lehman, and the Werfel Trophy winner, the Academic All-American of the Year, All-American center, Gabe Eichert, and I'm your host, Chad McKee. Well, here we go. Sooners and Ole Miss coming up, and Brent Venables this week saying he felt he gave it its time, moving on from offensive coordinator Seth Littrell after 7 games. So Joe John Finley will be elevated into a play-calling role. Of course, super familiar with offenses of all different sorts. But Teddy, his first time to call plays. What's he in store for Saturday?
Oh, it's going to be a cakewalk.
Sure.
I mean, no big deal.
Be fine.
Yeah, it's a perfect situation to
Top
step
rush
into.
defense potentially in the country that you're going to be facing?
Yeah, it's not a perfect situation. This is not what you would draw up to have your first time calling plays, but he's got to find a way to inspire this offense, find a way to create some explosive plays, move the football, have some ball security. Like I said, it's not a great situation, but you know, this is what we've got, and he's got to make something of it.
Bottom line is, Gabe, the play calling could be perfect, but 3 turnovers, 9 sacks. I lost count of the dropped passes. How much of this has to be on the players at this point?
Well, it's on everyone involved on the offense. I mean, let's be real. It wasn't all Seth Littrell's fault, right? Could some of the game plan stuff have been better? Absolutely, but the players have to hold up their end of the bargain. And my hope is that those guys feel some responsibility for Seth Littrell losing his job, because they had a hand in it. Their lack of execution had a hand in it. And I'm hoping this is a bit of a wake-up call for the guys on this offense. And the execution needs to be better. The attention to detail needs to be better. But the energy and effort need to be better. And my hope is that's what we see Saturday in Oxford. I hope these guys go out on the field and fly around with the energy and effort that Seth Littrell did when he was a player here.
Good way to put it. Excellent way to put it.
That's my hope, is that these guys, when I turn on the tape on Sunday, it looks different. Because it needs to, or else they're going to get beat.
Kevin Johns will also take a more prominent role. He's been on staff as an offensive analyst, Gabe. A lot of people probably just heard his name for the first time this week as the changes were being announced. But what can you tell us about his track record and his past history?
He's got a lot of experience, and he's worked under some really good coaches. And I haven't spent a lot of time with Coach Johns, but I can tell you this. He's got some crazy in him. There's no doubt about it. Any man that willingly works for Kevin Wilson as much as this man has, you got to have a few screws loose, because it ain't for everybody. I signed up to play for Coach Wilson. I'm a crazy person as well.
You know, you said of Kevin Wilson, he maybe got more out of his players than any coach that you have been around, Gabe. I remember you saying that.
There's no doubt about it. And Kevin Johns is an experienced offensive coordinator. He's called plays, most recently at Duke. I went back and watched some of the stuff that they did in 2023 with Riley Leonard at the quarterback position at Duke, and really liked some of the quick passing game that I saw. So I'm interested in seeing what new wrinkles he brings to this offense, because Brent Venables made it sound like he's having a heavy influence on what this game plan is going to look like.
Yeah, what will his role be, Teddy? How do they blend this all together? Kind of, it's not spur of the moment, but it's got to get done quickly.
Well, yeah, and I think he's going to have to find a way to sprinkle in some of the stuff that he's done previously. I mean, you can't just come in and take over an offense and implement all new stuff. And just listening to Coach Venables, he is not as well versed in the lingo of this offense and all of the finer details. He's been doing more advanced scouting stuff. So he's not at the capacity to be a play caller at the moment, but he's got some good concepts, and I think probably going to be passing game oriented. We have to find a way to get the ball out of the quarterback hand quickly. We're limited on our protection schemes. So the ball's got to come out quick, and his track record shows that he's been able to do some of that stuff at his stops.
So the view from 35,000 feet with these two teams, they're both hungry for a win, guys. I mean, obviously the Sooners, couple of losses in a row and 3 out of 4. And you've got an Ole Miss team that's coming off a bye, but prior to that was a heartbreaker for them. Overtime in Baton Rouge to LSU. They also have a home loss to Kentucky. So teams have been able to go in and have success in Oxford. But from an Oklahoma standpoint, the line of scrimmage has got to get better on the offensive side of the ball. We talk about the change in play calling. How can you immediately fix things at the line of scrimmage, Gabe, or can you?
Well, it would be, I think the number one thing would be, hey, find 5 guys that play the best together. Yeah. And we saw Bill Beanbo try all kinds of different combinations in the South Carolina game. It would be awfully nice if 5 guys could emerge in this week of practice and really separate themselves as the 5 guys that Bill Beanbo can trust to execute at a high level. I got bad news. Ole Miss is really good on the defensive line.
Not a great team to try and find it against.
No. Walter Nolan is as good as we've seen at the defensive tackle position. Future first-round pick, no doubt in my mind. And they are old and experienced along the defensive line, but one thing that I'm hoping to see is just better communication, pointing, talking. We saw it going back and thinking about the Auburn game. In that environment, these guys were communicating. It's going to be different guys than we saw in that game, but that was a great example of what this group can do, especially in that second half against Auburn, what this group can do when they communicate. That's the number one thing I want to see is guys communicating, being on the same page, targeting the proper guys. And if you do that, you give yourself a chance.
Teddy, I think that if you're watching Oklahoma from just a broad perspective and you're not watching the games, you're just looking at scores, so to speak, maybe the final scores are skewing the way that the defense is playing because they've gotten a little out of hand the last couple of weeks, but the defense continues to hold its own. I mean, 56 yards rushing allowed to South Carolina, a team that was running the – South Carolina had 100 yards, only team to rush for 100 yards against this Ole Miss defense this year. So from your perspective, Sooner defense playing well, but what could they even improve upon?
Well, the main thing is tackling. Whenever you look at some of the issues we've had, you go back to that second quarter we had against Texas where things kind of fell apart on us. And then, early in this football game, it's tackling. We could have got off the field early in the game against South Carolina after that first turnover we had, but we missed a wide open tackle and it turned into a big explosive play by the quarterback. Go back and look at that second quarter from Texas, multiple missed tackles from guys that are in position to make plays and uncharacteristic missed tackles from guys that typically don't. So if we clean up some of that, and I think there's been, a little bit of, worried about falling behind because some of the struggles of the offense have fed over to the defense, which, it's hard for it not to, but you have to limit that as much as you can because all you can do is your job. On a given play, you have to do what you're supposed to do and how you fit into the defense. And I think when guys start to see the game slipping away, they try and do too much, and that's whenever you see the problems happen. So just do your thing, focus on getting stops, try and get the ball back to the offense, and don't get caught up trying to do someone else's job.
You give up 256 yards, you have 11 tackles for loss and 6 sacks.
Should win a ball game.
It's winning defense.
It's winning defense.
That is
without question.
I mean, what else could you ask for from a defense?
Let's get the scoop on the Rebels presented by your neighborhood Brahms Ice Cream and Dairy Stores. Farm fresh for over 50 years. Starts with Lane Kiffin. Seems like it can be a fun, at times wild ride on the Lane train. Bottom line is they average 270 yards per game more on offense than their opponents. Now, the defense has a lot to do with that, but the offenses are good. How and why?
Jackson Dart. He's the key to everything that they do offensively, whether it's the run game or the pass game. I don't think they've really gotten their run game going the way that they thought they were going to get it going. Yeah. And it has a lot to do with their offensive line not creating a ton of movement. But what makes this offense so dangerous is Jackson Dart and his ability to push it down the field, especially to Trey Harris. That guy is fantastic. Now, we're not sure what his status is for this game is quite yet, but he's an absolute problem. That's the thing that stands out about Ole Miss to me is their willingness to push it down the field and produce those explosive plays in the passing game.
We're going to talk a little more about Trey Harris, Jackson Dart in a little bit, but we shift gears to the defense. They're stout, Teddy. They lead the country in rush defense. 66 yards per game. And as I said, South Carolina is the only team to run for 100 yards against them. What do you see in this group?
I see an elite interior defensive line. They are big, they're physical, they are hard to block. And defensively, if you can stop the run, you can be number one, limit teams to only 66 yards a game on the ground. That's a great starting point. The ultimate goal for a defense is to make teams one-dimensional, and that right there is exactly what they're doing. So they lean on their defensive line. They create some good pressure, and teams know that they're led by their defensive line. So the game plan, you have to build around that, and you end up doing things that maybe you don't want to do, not your specialty. And, they create big negative yardage plays. It's just, when you have a defensive line like that, it's tough.
You alluded to it, Gabe. Everybody on their starting defense, at least the 11 listed, they're either a junior or a senior. Yeah. Veteran groups, some of them are transfers, but they played a lot of college football. A lot of them are transfers.
Common thread. We've seen that a lot this year.
Let's hop into the time machine, shall we? 1999, Gabe was 9 years old. Teddy Lehman had announced his commitment. Had you signed already with the Sooners, Ted? No, not signed already. Still mulling it over. We thought Y2K was going to crash the world. And Oklahoma played Ole Miss the only other time. The Independence Bowl in Shreveport. Now, the thing's here, it snapped a 4-year bowl drought for the Sooners, and it began a stretch of 25 straight. It was Bob Stoops' first season. It was the final college football game of the 20th century. Sooners got to win 2 more games to go to a bowl this year. That streak of 25 is going to be snapped. A tumultuous week for the Sooner offense, but it was a tumultuous first quarter against South Carolina. Can a quarterback change bring about a welcome change in productivity? The fellas weigh in next on Sooner Game Day. Welcome back into Sooner Game Day. 3 first-quarter turnovers, 21 first-quarter South Carolina points, all in about the first 5 minutes. And Oklahoma only 53 yards rushing the football on offense. Tough day all around. But one of the bright spots was Jackson Arnold jumping back into the fray. He replaced Michael Hawkins at quarterback in the first quarter. And his touchdown pass, 54 yards, that he tossed in the third quarter to Brennan Thompson. It was the longest play by the Sooners offensively this season. Teddy, what did you see from Jackson Arnold? Did he look different to you?
Well, I mean, right there, we know that Jackson Arnold has a really good deep ball. Whenever he can get it out and we've got it protected, he throws a beautiful deep ball, and you saw that to Brennan Thompson. He moved around well. He was under pressure quite a bit, made a couple plays, as you see here, with his legs. Got into a little bit of a rhythm there, throwing some of the passes, moving the ball down the field, had some nice longer drives. But some of the same things remain. Was better taking care of the football, but we still have to get the ball out quicker. We have some things that are open. We have to get the ball out on time and on target. We're still holding it a little bit too long in the pocket.
So Jackson Arnold, Brent Venables reaffirming this week that he will be the starter moving forward. Gabe, do you think time over there watching maybe helped him, aided his? I know there's no substitute for snaps. Right. But seeing the big picture and kind of being able to analyze things a bit.
Well, in a weird way, the offense, it's not like the offense improved with him off the field. So in a weird way, that may bring him some more confidence. Like, hey, I wasn't the problem. Wasn't solely the problem. There's a human nature element to that as well. But it all comes down to decision-making for Jackson Arnold. That's why he got benched in the first place. He was making poor decisions with the football. If he can just do his job, he doesn't need to go out there and be Superman. It may be difficult at times, but he's got to trust the other 10 guys out there on the field with him. Just go out there and make good decisions with the football. Hand it off when the box says it should be handed off. Throw the RPO stuff when you're supposed to throw the RPO stuff. Read coverage, be calm, put the ball where it's supposed to go. And if he just does the simple things and plays kind of boring football, assignment sound boring football, this offense can move the football. But if he doesn't, then it's not going to be very fun for us.
It's going to be his first start on the road as Sooner quarterback in a true road environment. You had the bowl game last year. But, Teddy, when you talk about guys needing to step up, with wide receivers, it's not next man up. It might be the next and, the next and the next. And it ended up being a guy nobody expected. Jacob Jordan, 6 catches for 86 yards. Gabe, where did he come from? Or are we going to see more of this freshman?
South Lake Carroll. That's where it came
They've
from.
They've produced some football players.
They've produced some football players. Been a great program for a long time, but guy gets open.
Yeah.
That's all I care about. And when I turned on the tape, he plays with a sense of urgency. He plays with a desperation to get to the proper spot on the field. He plays with a desperation to get to where he's supposed to be. And it was noticeable. And I don't know what his role is going to look like in this football game, but he's gotten as open as anyone has gotten all season long in the intermediate area of the field.
Other than maybe Deion Burks when he was healthy.
Well, yeah, and that is an area of the field that this offense has really lacked production. Mm-hmm. That intermediate passing game, that 8 to 12, 8 to 15-yard range, if Jacob Jordan can be super detailed in his route running and get open in that area of the field, that means Jackson Arnold can get the ball out of his hand quickly. That would be huge for this team in this game when you consider what Ole Miss has on that defensive line.
Yeah, Ole Miss, very good defense. Teddy, we've been through the circumstances. Guy starting his first true road game at quarterback. You're down 5, although maybe you're going to get some good news on the wide receiver front. We'll get to that in just a moment. And a new play caller. How would you approach it if you're coming up with a game plan for this offense against that Ole Miss defense?
Well, I think it's really simple, honestly. First of all, we have to look at what the strength of this football team is. What are our capabilities? What type of game do we need in order to win? And we need a low-scoring, drawn-out football game. Or I say drawn-out. Well, we need to shorten the game, try and limit possessions for Ole Miss. And the way you do that is you got to try and find a way to run the ball, and you got to be able to complete passes. You don't want a bunch of incomplete passes. So we'll go back to what I said last week. Get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly, right? We gave up 9 sacks last week. You can't give up 9 sacks and win a football game. So the ball has to come out quick. We have to establish some run, be able to be methodical, move the chains. We're not going to be able to run the ball going right at the strength of their defense, which is their interior defensive line. Have to find a way to attack the perimeter, whether it's outside zone, some pin pull stuff to get outside of them and make the secondary be the guys that tackle, jet sweep stuff, throw the bubbles, throw the tunnels. Kind of like Gabe said, it needs to be boring. And if you can get to the fourth quarter and you're within a score, maybe you have a lead, you can become more risky whenever you need it. Right? We have to maintain possession. We can't turn the football over. So to me, it's avoid the teeth of their defense, get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly, and try and get to the fourth quarter.
I want to count how many times Teddy has said in the last 2 weeks, and on the radio broadcast as well, get the ball out of the quarterback's hands.
I haven't said it as many times as we've given up sacks, so I'm not saying it enough.
It's true.
I said it last week in multiple places. Don't try to block number 2 or number 38 with anyone that's not an offensive lineman. Mm-hmm. Those guys will throw – they're going to throw offensive linemen out of their way anyways because they're that good. Don't even think about it.
You're wasting a body if it's not an offensive lineman.
You need multiple bodies. Multiple.
We got to get to break. Sooners hoping they have multiple bodies at the wide receiver spot. Last week, Deion Burks teased everyone, popped up on that video board in pregame warmups, and then he didn't play. Perhaps it's this week. As far as the Sooner defense, they continue to stand the test, but they haven't faced many tests quite like they will Saturday. Can they get back to their takeaway ways in Oxford? We'll discuss next on Sooner Game Day, presented by Taco Mayo. Big challenge awaiting the Sooner defense this Saturday. Since the beginning of 2020, when Lane Kiffin arrived in Oxford, the Rebels leading the country in yards per game. You see what they've done through the years. 6th in 2021, 2022, top 10 once again. Jackson Dart coming into the mix that year. Last year, a little bit of a dip, but still very good.
Yeah.
How do you contain this year's version, Teddy?
Well, you don't give up big plays. I mean, that's what they feast on. The explosive plays, explosive runs, pushing the ball down the field in the pass game. If you can limit those big chunk plays, they're a good offense, but, I think the offensive line is okay. I think the running back and backs are okay. Now, Harris at wideout is elite. He's one of the better wideouts in the country. We'll see if he plays. But to me, it's if you see this, they have it bottled up, and then he gets out. The big runs, they like to go vertical. This is responsibility football. If you just play your position, play your spot, force them to have to go down the field methodically, 10, 12 play drives, I don't think they can do it against our defense. These plays right here that you're watching, that's how they turn the lights out on people. They're able to create every now and then. They'll get the big pass play, guy will miss a tackle, and they're off to the races. We got to limit those.
Gabe, run defense was stout last week against South Carolina. 54 yards allowed. Maybe Danny Stutzman's best game of the year, certainly one of his better games. What did you think of?
Thought it was really good. Physicality from the defensive line was excellent. I thought that they handled business against that South Carolina offensive line, and that's what my expectation was coming into that game. But with the way that the game started, South Carolina never felt the pressure to have to make plays offensively. And I think that was one of the key reasons. It is the key reason that the Sooners defense wasn't able to force any turnovers in that game, is because South Carolina never felt like they had to go and make any plays. And when you feel that way as an offense, you protect the football and you're super conservative.
The turnovers. Oklahoma, we break everything down. And then just about every game comes back to turnovers. It honestly does. Oklahoma's one-loss record this year, games where they've won the turnover battle, 4. They have won those games. Where they've lost the turnover battle,
my gosh.
3. They've lost those.
I'm shocked.
Last 2 weeks, though, Gabe, it's 6-1. Giving it away 6 times, taking it away once, -5 turnover margin. Those things kind of come and go, right? Turnovers. But can you get back to forcing some more of them as they were prior to the last 2 weeks?
It would be great if you can. Whether that's forcing fumbles, hitting the quarterback, ball flies up in the air, you pick it off. But really, when you're talking about OU's turnover margin, the offense they got to stop giving the ball away.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just play an even turnover margin game, you give yourself a chance. But 6 fumbles against South Carolina, that's insane. To put the ball on the ground 6 times, throw a couple interceptions, 1 for a touchdown, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. You can't win football games doing that. And I know the defense, they talk about it all the time. Hey, we got to force turnovers. Well, one of the keys is the offense can't put this team in a massive hole.
That's been the big factor. That's what's carried over. You look at the games lately where we haven't forced as many turnovers, it's because we're not close in score. Back to what he said, whenever the score is close, other team has to go down the field, have to make plays, have to try and get some separation. They're going to be more risky with the football. You can get them into some spots where they're one-dimensional. If they have a big lead, you're never one-dimensional. You're okay handing it off on 3rd and long. You're okay throwing a little screen or a draw. So that's the main thing you try and do defensively, make people one-dimensional. And if you're down several scores, you can't do it.
We talk about complementary football all the time on here. Turnover margin falls into that.
Sure.
You have to play complementary football to be good, to be a good turnover margin team. And when the offense is struggling the way that they are struggling, it's really hard to be good in turnover margin.
No doubt. And Oklahoma's Rush defense has been solid this year. Remember, since Brent Venables arrived, they're number 1 in the country in interceptions, going on 3 years now. Going to need some of that. And moreover, the pass rush and the defensive backfield, it feels like it's going to have to be more than just our Mason Thomas and Billy Bowman, the guys who are there that have produced. This could be all hands on deck because we're going to discuss the pace of play of Ole Miss and the explosive plays. Teddy, but does it feel like you're going to need everybody you got to face this offense?
Oh, we're going to be in that boat every week for the rest of the season. That's exactly what we're going to have. And again, you know, if you want to look and say, well, we've had a lack of a pass rush. Well, why have you had a lack of a pass rush? Usually because the game is getting out of hand. They're able to keep extra guys in. They're not trying to get 5 wide receivers out, 5 eligibles out. So they got multiple guys back there protecting. But when the game has been tight and teams have to find a way to get down the field, you look at the Auburn game. They're desperate. They have to find a way to get down the field. They're one-dimensional. What happens? We get like 3 sacks in a row. So that's what we have to continue to do, play total defense, keep everything in front of us, not give up the explosive plays, and that'll help our defensive line out a lot.
Coming up next, the particulars. How do the Rebels keep the lane train rolling on down the tracks? Well, it helps to have a quarterback who throws darts. A scouting report on Lane Kiffin's offense and Heisman hopeful quarterback Jackson Dart next on Sooner Game Day, presented by Taco Mayo. Welcome back. Sooner Game Day, Oklahoma at Ole Miss. Sooners' first ever game in the state of Mississippi, 11 a.m. on ESPN on Saturday morning. Sooners taking on Lane Kiffin, who, with a win, could become the fastest Ole Miss head coach to reach 40 wins. And his offenses just hum right along. 20 scoring drives of under 2 minutes, 10 scoring drives of under a minute, and they run plays faster than anybody in the SEC, Gabe, on average 22.5 seconds to get a play off. How do they click?
Tempo. It's what they do. That's their identity. And it all starts with Jackson Dart at the quarterback position. And they click by having really good skill talent.
Yeah.
That's what makes this thing go. But when you look at the offensive system, OU's defense should be very comfortable playing against this system because they've practiced against it for the last 3 seasons.
Right.
I mean, this is very, very similar to what Jeff Lebby ran when he was the offense coordinator here. And then we kept a lot of the pieces of that offense throughout this offseason and coming into this season. So OU's defense, it should not be an uncomfortable experience for them. They have prepared against this style of offense for a long, long time.
Jackson Dart is third nationally, Teddy, in passing yards, maybe more than that. He's a third-year starting quarterback. I mean, only Eli Manning and Bo Wallace have more passing yards in Ole Miss history than this guy. What makes him elite? What makes him one of the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the country?
Well, he's a good all-around athlete, number one. He's got some nice size to him. He can get out and run, which keeps people honest. Throws a really good ball, deep ball. He's accurate. But, you know, the system, and he's really good and efficient at running the system. You know, it's a lot of RPO stuff. If you mess up the number count, you lean too heavy one way or the other, he's going to make you pay. He's got really good players at wide receiver. They love to push the ball down the field. I mean, what this offense wants to do is they want to run it, force you to stop the run, and then bury you with the deep ball with vertical routes. That's ultimately what they want to do. Sometimes it's difficult to get there, but that's what they want to do. And he throws a great deep ball, and he's got some good wideouts that can go bring it in.
You've talked about Trey Harris already, Gabe. He is an elite guy, potential first round. No, he will be a first round wide receiver.
Be shocked if he's not.
Injured against LSU 2 weeks ago, has had the bye week. How critical is his availability, whether he is in there or not?
Massively critical. I know that I'm typically the, hey, I want to see both of these teams at full strength guy. I know that. Would not mind not seeing Trey Harris out there on Saturday. He's fantastic.
He needs to be smart with that injury, right?
Let's not rush it back.
Let's not rush that.
Hey, he needs to be careful. He's got a bright football future.
That's right.
Needs to be smart. But in all seriousness, guy's an absolute problem. 6'3", 210, and can fly.
Yeah.
I mean, he has 338 more receiving yards than any other wide receiver in the SEC.
And he missed part of the LSU game.
Yeah, the guy.
You said last week they would have won that game. You know, he stays in the game. They got a chance to win that thing late. They end up losing in overtime.
There's no doubt about it.
Another week, another good defense. You got Jared Ivey. You got J.J. Pegues. They've added the Arkansas transfer, Chris Paul Jr. Teddy, they've got him all over the place, but it starts right there. You just can't run the ball against them because of the interior guys and the front seven that they have.
Yeah, rinse and repeat. You know, week in, week out, you're going to see big physical bodies across the front. You're going to see athletic linebackers, good length in the secondary, guys that can come up and play the run. So, I mean, but yeah, it's led by the interior. Walter Nolan is really, really good. He's about as good as they come. I don't know if you're going to find a better player out there in the country. They do some good stuff on the interior with some of their stunning and twisting. You mentioned Chris Paul coming from Arkansas, big physical linebacker, really good player in the blitz schemes. And they're solid at corner. You know, I would say if there was a weakness of the defense, it's the secondary, but they've got some good, experienced players there. They keep it fairly simple on defense. They don't do a whole lot of exotic stuff. It's pretty straightforward because they've got good athletes.
They got them all over the place, all levels, and it will be tough for the Sooners. So we allow the fellas to tell us what they think could, should, and they hope happens. We call it My Pleasure, presented by Chick-fil-A. Download the Chick-fil-A app and order your favorites ahead of schedule. Gabe, what would give you the most pleasure? Your first visit to Oxford, Mississippi, being on the sidelines, and you're standing there at about 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon.
0 sacks. I don't know if that's realistic, but if you have 0 sacks, if you give up 0 sacks in your Oklahoma, that means a lot of things have gone well. And that means that a lot of people involved in this thing have done their job. That means the offensive line has held up. The backs and tight ends have been good when they've needed to hold up. And that means Jackson Arnold's getting the ball out of his hand.
Would you settle for 3 or less?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Massive improvement.
Yeah, it would be a huge improvement. 9-3 would be great.
Yeah, Teddy, what would give you the most pleasure?
Win the turnover battle. And, you know, whether that's the defense going out and forcing 5 or 6, or if it's the offense maintaining possession. I mean, we've seen this team do it before where they can hang on to the football, you know, lean on some of the running game, keep the ball closer to the line of scrimmage. If you need to, take some shots, right? Taking a deep shot is really not putting the football at risk typically. So, yeah, if we can win the turnover battle, I think we can have a chance to be in the football game.
Up next, a look around the SEC, probably the biggest win of the year last week. Georgia going down to the 40 acres and getting a win. We'll recap that, make some picks as well next on Sooner Game Day, presented by Taco Mayo.
Sooner Game Day is brought to you by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. OU Health, proud to be Oklahoma's flagship academic health system. The best place to gear up for game day is shop.soonersports.com. Log on to Soonersports.com/kids for information about joining the Sooner Junior Kids Club, presented by OG&E and brought to you in part by Orthodontics exclusively, Mathis Home, and Devon Energy. Thank you to our cornerstone television partners, OU Health, OG&E, Fowler Auto Group, and Coca-Cola.
NCAA update presented by Taco Mayo. Big appetite, bigger savings. Download and save today. What a bizarre scene. Bevo, he gets a bite out of his backside from the Bulldogs. Texas gets fined for throwing bottles onto the field.
Bevo got a bath.
Yeah, he did.
As well.
Beer bath.
Beer bath.
You had the Minister of Culture, Matthew McConaughey, who was giving it to the Texas fans.
That's a bogey move, man.
Tennessee, big win for Josh Heupel as well, guys. So what does all of this do for the race in the SEC? Vanderbilt's still at play. You got Georgia up there at the top, and Tennessee's in good shape.
Georgia, and I know Oregon's ranked number 1. I think Georgia's the best team in the country.
Yeah.
What they just did against a very, very good Texas team, it kind of showed you who's still the class of college football.
Yeah.
That was, they went into Texas's house, Ted, and they smacked them around.
Yeah, and if you, outside of a handful of things that happened in that game, it wasn't close.
And they're one half of football away from being incredible. The Alabama first half, throw it away, and they're by far the best team in football this year.
And you start thinking about that with the way things have gone for Alabama lately. It makes you wonder, how did that happen?
Yeah, right. We'll say they struggled a little bit against Kentucky as well. Struggled against them, but Kentucky went to Ole Miss and won. Or who can figure it out? We're trying
College football's impossible.
Exactly, and that's why we love it. How about Riverwind Pick'em time? Let's take a look at what happened last week. It was kind of a mediocre week, Teddy. We all went 3-5.
Yeah, well, I guess we're all still within range to win this thing, right?
We shouldn't. Missouri came back to beat Auburn. My goodness.
Yeah.
We were on the wrong side of that one, boys.
How many times has Auburn snatched defeat from the jaws of victory this year?
All the time.
Yeah. That's why you just can't trust them.
Every time.
Our Pick'em game is presented by Riverwind Casino. Good times, great rewards. So this week's huge matchup is the only two teams still unbeaten in the SEC. You got LSU, you got Texas A&M. What a great job that Mike Elko has done at Texas A&M. They had that early loss, but they've been good since then. Both teams have won 6 straight. Home team has won 7 in a row in this series. It's in College Station. Have I swayed you to take the Aggies?
Yes, you have.
Okay.
I'm taking Texas A&M.
Tell them why, Ted.
Well, I think being at home is critical. I like that defense, and Gabe's trying to pin me down on the fact they got a defensive coach.
That's why you're picking them. You love Mike Elko.
Maybe.
You hate Brian Kelly and you love Mike Elko.
I think he's done a good job, and their offense has found a way to be efficient, get the job done.
I'm so excited to watch this football game. A couple of the offensive linemen for LSU going against a couple of those D linemen from Texas A&M. That's the stuff.
Yeah.
That is the stuff for me. But give me LSU. I like the combination of Nussmeier and Lacey and Anderson. I just think they have more big play capability. It's not going to be easy. Kyle Field's going to be wild for this game.
Oh, are you kidding me? It's going to
give
be
me LSU to go get it done.
It's going to be wild as Baton Rouge might be if they were playing it there. Yeah, Nussmeier's been very good. I like LSU in this game as well. Missouri, Alabama. You mentioned Missouri, a win? Yeah, it was a win against Auburn last week. Alabama, this is gut check time for Kalen DeBoer. That's the only way. I mean, this feels like a prove-it game for both of these teams, doesn't it, Gabe? Who you got?
Brady Cook went to the hospital, came back and
played.
It's just unbelievable. But
and without him, they probably don't win that game.
Oh, there's no doubt they lose it. I don't think Drew Pine was going to get it done.
Probably not.
But I love Alabama in this game. There's a lot of negativity right now. Milroe does look banged up, but it's hard to believe that Brady Cook's going to be effective with that ankle injury. Give me the Tide.
Yeah, I'm going to take Alabama as well, but it will be interesting. This is almost one where they prefer to be on the road because if they don't come out good and play well early, there's no telling what that place is going to sound like.
Legend and all those guys on Paul Feinbaum's show. It's going to be tough to deal with. We only got 60 seconds. Come on. Texas, Vanderbilt. This game looks a lot tougher than at the beginning of the year. Diego Pavia, is he the most consistent quarterback in this game, Teddy?
Yeah, I mean, that is going to be interesting, the quarterback. I got to take Texas just because of all the talent, but you know where I'm rooting.
I think Texas got a wake-up call last week, and ultimately it'll be one of the best things that could have happened to them.
It's unanimous. We're all taking Texas. BYU and UCF. This is a league that's up for grabs. Iowa State is unbeaten in the league, and BYU is the only other unbeaten in the Big 12. Wheels kind of coming off the Gus bus at UCF. They've lost 4 straight. I'm going to take UCF in this game. Teddy, who are you taking?
Well, I mean, I don't think that's that bad of a pick. I mean, I think BYU's a good football team. I'm not sure how they've gotten to where they are right now as an undefeated team, but I'm going to take BYU to get the win, but UCF's dangerous.
I thought I was going to be the only one to take UCF.
They averaged 270 a game on the ground.
I'm taking them. I think BYU, the fact that they needed the last play of the game to beat Oklahoma State with the way that Oklahoma State's playing, little alarming to me.
Boise State, UNLV, this is an elimination game, you'd say, in the Mountain West as far as the playoff is concerned. Who you got?
Genty.
Okay.
Same. Boise State, give me the best player on the field.
Yeah, I agree. He's the best player. And UNLV, sorry it was a fun ride, but I think they're out of there.
Good defense. UNLV's got a really good defense.
And a good running offense.
It's going to be a really fun game to watch.
Hopefully we all go better than 3-5 as we did last week in Riverwind Pick'em. Coming up next, some hot takes and looking back at Sooners in the NFL as we close shop on Sooner Game Day.
Sooner Game Day is brought to you by Riverwind Casino. Good times, great rewards. Coca-Cola. Is Coke Zero the best Coke ever? Take a test. OG&E. We energize life. The Sooner Sports Podcast is your all-access audio pass to Sooner Sports. Listen as Toby Rowland and Chris Plank talk all things Sooners. New episodes drop every day. Log on to Soonersports.com/podcast or search Sooner Sports Podcast in your favorite podcast provider. Presented by Allstate and Riverwind Casino.
Oklahoma and Ole Miss coming up on Saturday, 11 a.m. That game is on ESPN. You can hear the fellas on the Sooner Sports Radio Network. I'm doing the math. That means the 3-hour pregame coverage begins at 8 a.m. Central. You guys doing a good job. You and Chris Plank holding it down for a lot of the first hour. Good interviews.
Early morning in Oxford.
It's
yeah,
the
we got
Grove.
to drive too.
Going to be beautiful down there. Sooners in the NFL from this past week. We had to wait an extra day because we had both Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray playing Monday night football games. Jalen Hurts looking good for the Eagles. Everybody wants to bury the Eagles. There's discord between coach and quarterback. How about 3 touchdowns and a win against the Giants team? That's not great. It's the Giants. You have to throw that in. Joe
A lot
Mixon.
can change in the NFL really quickly. Ask
No doubt.
Baker.
Joe Mixon looking good now that he's healthy, and Baker Mayfield gotta turn off the turnover machine. Does Baker Mayfield?
He's going to have to find some wide receivers.
That's true. Maybe some help will arrive. And Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, they beat Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers on Monday Night Football as well.
That clip of Kyler running down the sideline is just – he looks like he's in fast forward, even in the NFL. It's crazy.
Yep.
He looks like Deion Sanders used to look when he was playing, intercepting passes, running around NFL fields. It is time for Hot Takes presented by Air Comfort Solutions, your total home solution for plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and electrical. Make the winning call today. What's the winning call going to be on Saturday in Oxford, Teddy?
I'm going to say we have a 100-yard rusher.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know who it's going to be. Maybe it's Caleb Hicks.
My eyebrows almost just got singed off.
That's hotter
Hot
than
take.
the studio.
What are we doing here, right? Let's get as hot as we can.
I like it.
It's funny.
Come on,
'cause
top that.
I'm going along the same lines. I'm going to say OU averages over 4 yards a carry. To put that in perspective, this season the Sooners are averaging 3.1.
Yep.
Ole Miss has given up 1.96 yards per rush, number 1 in the country. 4 yards per carry would be
have to find some big ones.
amazing.
If you can run the football, though, just a little bit. If maybe Deion Burks comes back and is healthy, a big weapon that Oklahoma could add, can they generate enough offense, Teddy?
I think you can generate enough offense if you just don't turn the football over, maintain some possession, help your defense out a little bit. Yeah.
You have to have explosive plays in the passing game. You have to. We have seen.
They've been there.
They have been there. Brennan Thompson, we saw it last week against South Carolina, but this defense for Ole Miss is too good for OU's offense to just go methodically up and down the field. That is not going to happen. You have to have explosive plays to change this football game for OU.
Explosive plays, limit Ole Miss's explosive plays, and the turnover. Sooners a -5 turnover margin the last 2 weeks. Enjoy it. Hope everybody has a safe trip to Oxford. I know a lot of Sooner fans have wanted to go there. They get that opportunity this Saturday with the 11 a.m. kickoff. For Teddy Lehman and for Gabe Eicher, I'm Chad McKee. We'll talk to you next week on Sooner Game Day presented by Taco Mayo.